When it comes to dealing damage in Monster Hunter, we can all agree that building for Affinity is the surest way to be able to reach the highest amount of damage possible. The bonus that we get from critical hits is just too large to ignore, more so if we use the critical boost skill. That said, this is obviously only applicable if we do get the critical hit. I will share with you the build that I use in order to not only maximize critical hit damage, but also increase the consistency to make sure that we get those critical hits as often as possible. There are two things that you must take into consideration when looking at this build. First, this build will evolve as new content is released. It is a base build. I will revisit it every time that we get an update in order to improve it. Second, this game is heavily based on the talismans that you are able to get through RNG rolling. As such, the better your talisman, the better your build. Unfortunately, we cannot control which talisman we get, so I will be doing this build with the absolute minimum requirement possible. No god talismans, no lucky rolls, just the minimum. Let's get started. The equipment we will be running is a fully mixed set, taking parts from many different monsters. Our weapon will be the Nargacuga Greatsword, also known as the Dark of Night. And for armor, we will be using the high-rank versions of the Barath Helm, the Remobra Chest, the Rathalos Gloves, the Scalda Waist, and the Rajang Legs. The talisman we are using is a Fatal Tempest talisman that gives us 1 point in weakness exploit with a level 2 decoration slot. This is the most important piece of the build. The talisman you see here is the minimum requirement to run the basic greatsword builds that we have access to at this moment. Better talismans will improve your build, but this is the least you need to have to be able to take full advantage of the tools we currently have access to in the game. As mentioned before, we will be using the Nargacuga Greatsword. We choose this weapon because it looks absolutely fantastic, but also because it provides the highest amount of base affinity that we can get our hands on at the moment. The Dark of Night has a raw attack power of 180 that becomes 188 when using the Attack Boost 3 in its Rampage slot. It is worth noting that you can use Affinity Boost 2 instead to get a bit more consistency out of the build. I personally do not think it's necessary, but keep it in mind and make your decision. The Greatsword also has 20 hits of natural white sharpness and the incredible base affinity of 35%. Both the sharpness and the affinity are key to keep our damage consistency up. Finally, it gives us one level 2 decoration slot, the most useful kind in the game, which opens up additional options for the build. The decorations that we use are the ones that follow. On the Greatsword, 1 attack jewel. On the helm, 1 charger jewel, 1 grinder jewel. On the chest, 2 grinder jewel. On the gloves, 1 charger jewel. On the legs, 2 brace jewels. On the talisman, 1 charger jewel. With this combination of armor and decorations, we will be hunting with the following skills: Attack Boost 4, Critical Boost 3, Weakness Exploit 3, Focus 3, Speed Sharpening 3, Flinch Free 2, Latent Power 1, Offensive Guard 1, Defense Boost 1. From this list, it is obvious to see that the important skills are Attack Boost, Weakness Exploit, Critical Boost, and Focus. These are the skills that will provide us with our damage, and they are the number 1 priority. Afterwards, I recommend the use of 3 grinder jewels to get speed sharpening. Since the Nargacuga Greatsword's sharpness is scarce, it is important to be able to get back into white as quickly as possible. I run 2 levels of flinch free because, besides not being interrupted by the attacks of other hunters, I have had some success in not letting the monster strip me. Nevertheless, these two decoration slots can be anything you want. Offensive guard and defense boosts are leftover skills from the armor pieces. They are useful, but not necessary. Finally, I want to talk about latent power. This is a skill that you will never see me build for. I will never go out of my way to get it. That said, it is a skill that is nice to have. When it activates, we get an extra 10% affinity that is incredibly valuable for our build. If it is active, I am happy. If it isn't, I do not worry. It is an extra boost and not something that I count on. Nevertheless, it is very welcome. This build provides high damage, but its greatest strength is definitely consistency. With a total affinity of 85% when hitting a monster's weak point, which then turns to 95% if latent power is active, we can count on our damage being the highest it can be most of the time. Our damage loss due to not getting a critical hit will be minimal. That being said, the total damage value will still be lowered when compared to other builds that use the Tigrex Greatsword. We find ourselves needing to decide whether we want the highest damage possible or the highest consistency possible. It is something to think about. This build is made to be able to take on any monster, solo or with other hunters, by providing an extremely consistent way of dealing high amounts of damage. It is a multi-purpose build that will prove to be extremely reliable. If you are able to get better talismans, then you can improve upon this, but at least this version is something that most hunters will be able to run without any problems. I hope that it serves you as well as it has served me. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for your time, and I hope that I get to see you on the next one.